I was coming back from the market with my son in my arms. He had just turned 5, when I saw the car parked in front of the house. It wasn't just any car. It was his car. The car of the man who had disappeared 5 years ago without looking back. The man who never sent a single penny in child support. The man who had cut me off completely when he found out I was pregnant. And now there he was, leaning against the hood, arms crossed, as if he had the right to just show up. My body froze. I hugged my son tighter, instinctively, as if I needed to protect him from something. He sensed my tension and asked in his little voice, "Mommy, who is that man?" I swallowed hard, because the answer was, "He's your biological father." But how could I explain that to a child who had never seen that man in his life? Who had no memories, no photos, no connection? For him, being a father was an abstract concept, something that existed in his friends' families but not in ours. He took a step forward. He approached us with that fake, forced smile, as if we were going to hug and everything would be all right. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. I put my son behind me and said loud and clear, "What do you want here?" He hesitated, looked at the child, and then uttered the phrase I'll never forget. "I want to see my son. I want to be a father again. I've changed, and I've come to do the right thing. To be a father again. As if I'd ever been one. As if disappearing for 5 years without sending a penny, without calling once, without asking if his son was alive or dead, was something that could be erased with a simple phone call. I felt such a surge of rage rising in my throat that I had to take a deep breath to keep from exploding right there, in front of my son. I told him to wait. I went inside, left my son with the neighbor who always helped me, and came back. This time without a child nearby. Without an innocent witness. And I told him everything I had swallowed for 5 years. I talked about the nights I spent alone. The diapers I paid for alone. The doctor's appointments, the vaccinations, the first day of school, the first tooth, the first word. Everything he missed because he chose to miss it. I talked about the hunger I endured so he could eat. The desperation of not having enough money for rent. Every tear I hid from my son so he wouldn't have to bear the weight of his father's absence. He remained silent, staring at the floor. Then he offered the excuse every absent father uses. I was young. I wasn't ready. I was shocked. I interrupted him. I was young too. I wasn't ready either. But I stayed. That's the difference between us. He tried to argue, saying that things were different now, that he had a good job, that he could help, that he wanted to build a relationship with his son. And that's when I made the decision. The decision I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head, but which now, standing before him, I needed to pronounce firmly, without trembling. I looked him in the eyes and said, "You're not going to just walk into her life like that, out of nowhere, as if nothing had happened. If you want to be a father, you're going to start by paying. 5 years of back child support. Down to the last penny. When you pay the debt, we'll talk about visitation. But while you owe, don't touch her." He was shocked. He said I was being radical, that I was using our son as a bargaining chip, that I only wanted money. And I replied with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. He's not a bargaining chip. He's a responsibility. You abandoned him for 5 years. Now you want to play the hero. Not with me. You'll prove it with actions, not words. And the first thing is to pay what you owe. He left that day without an answer. And I went home trembling, but with my head held high. Because for the first time I hadn't given up. I hadn't made it easy for him. I hadn't opened the door just because he'd decided to show up. My son was mine. And no one was going to enter his life without going through me first. If you're listening and you also have an ex who disappeared and now wants to come back like nothing ever happened, like this video. Because we have to stop accepting part-time fathers. And comment below. Have you ever had to make a decision as difficult as this? Sometimes, reading another mother's story is what we need to find the courage to protect our children. After he left, I stayed up all night. It wasn't because I was worried about him. It was because I was worried about myself. About the decision I'd made. Because even knowing I'd done the right thing, a nagging voice started whispering in my head. What if you're being selfish? What if your child grows up blaming you for pushing his father away? What if you deny him the chance to have a complete family? I woke up the next day exhausted, not physically but mentally. My son noticed something was different. He always did. He came over while I was making coffee, hugged my legs and asked, "Mommy, are you sad?" I forced a smile, crouched down to his level, and told him no, I was just tired. But inside I was fighting a war. Because being a single mother is also about that. Carrying the weight of impossible decisions alone. The following days were worse. Because he didn't give up. He started sending messages. Not insults like before, but please. He said he wanted to meet his son, that it wasn't fair for me to stop him, that a child needs a father, that I was being cruel. And each message was a stab at the guilt I already carried. Why was I being cruel? Was demanding he pay the back child support too much? I spoke with my neighbor, the one who had always supported me. I told her everything. She was silent for a while and then said something that shocked me. But now she wants to see the child. Doesn't that matter? People change. Don't you think your son deserves to have a father? That hit me like a ton of bricks. Because she, who had always been on my side, was now making me question things too. What if everyone thought I was wrong? I spent the next week on autopilot. I worked, took care of my son, cooked and cleaned the house. But inside I was falling apart. The guilt had snowballed. I started questioning myself. Wasn't I using child support as an excuse? Deep down, did I just want revenge? Was I punishing my son out of resentment? Until one night, as I was putting my son to bed, he looked at me with those enormous eyes and said something that broke my heart. "Mommy, why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" I felt like the ground was giving way beneath my feet. I hugged him, held him tight and said, "You do have a father. He just doesn't live with us. But you have me. And I'm both your mother and your father. And you are very loved." He seemed satisfied with the answer and fell asleep. But I stayed awake. Cried a lot that night. I cried because I was afraid I'd made the wrong decision. I cried with anger at having to choose alone. I cried because no one taught me how to deal with this. There's no manual on how to react when an absent father decides to reappear 5 years later. There's no right answer. There's only pain. And the attempt to do it right. And the fear of making the wrong choice. But deep down, very deep down, a firm little voice began to grow. "You're not wrong. You're protecting him. Because if I let him in like that, without any proof of commitment, without any responsibility, what would stop him from disappearing again? What would protect my son from getting attached and being abandoned a second time?" And it was there, in that early morning silence, that I understood. Guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you care. And I cared too much for my son to let just anyone into his life without proving they deserved to be there. The next day I made a decision. If I so badly wanted to be a father, it had to be done legally. Not according to his terms. Not according to his family's terms. Legally. I picked up my phone and searched. Translate. How to collect back child support. I read everything that came up. Forums, legal websites, testimonials from other mothers. And I discovered something I didn't know. Back child support can be collected. And those who don't pay can, in fact, be arrested. I made an appointment at the public defender's office. It was far away. I had to miss half a day of work and leave my son with a neighbor. But I went. I arrived with a bag full of papers. His birth certificate, receipts for expenses I paid myself, screenshots of old messages where he blocked me. Everything that proved he had disappeared. The lawyer received me, listened to my story in silence, and at the end said something that gave me strength. Translate. You have a solid case. Jose. And he will have to pay. He explained the process to me. First, we would request retroactive child support. That is, we would claim the 5 years he hadn't paid. Then, we would establish monthly child support payments starting from that point. And if he refused, an arrest warrant. Simple as that. I listened to all of that in a trance, because for 5 years I thought I wasn't entitled to anything. That, since he disappeared before I was born, I had lost all possibility of claiming anything. But no. The law was on my side. I signed the papers. I authorized the process. And I left that building with a strange feeling. Fear and relief at the same time. Fear of what awaited me, of the fights, of the trials. But relief at no longer being alone in this fight. Justice was on my side. It was no longer me against him. It was the law against his irresponsibility. When I got home, my son greeted me with a drawing. It was of him and me, holding hands with a huge sun in the sky. I kept that drawing like it was gold. 'Cause it reminded me why I did it. It wasn't for revenge. It wasn't out of anger. It was for him. To make sure he had the bare minimum. To show him that mother's fight. And that no one can trample on us without consequences. 3 weeks later, the notification arrived. I knew because she called me. And this time there were no pleas. There was anger. She screamed on the phone saying I was crazy, that I was exaggerating, that I just wanted money, that I would regret it. I listened to it all in silence. And when she finished screaming, I said to her, with a calmness that surprised me, "You had 5 years to do the right thing. Now it's up to the judge to decide." Hung up. I blocked the number. And I took a deep breath. Because for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't begging anymore. I wasn't asking for help anymore. I wasn't alone in keeping everything under control anymore. Had the law. And the law doesn't compromise on abandonment. The following weeks were the hardest I've ever lived through, even after everything I'd already been through. The legal process was moving forward, but it was slow, bureaucratic, full of paperwork and hearings. I had to miss work to go to court, spending money I didn't have on copies and transportation. And all the while, life didn't stop. My son needed to eat, go to school, have clean clothes. And me. I was on the verge of a breakdown. I started having insomnia. I'd lie in bed exhausted, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking, what if he doesn't pay? What if he disappears again? What if the judge doesn't rule in my favor? I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing, sweating profusely, feeling like everything was about to fall apart. And during the day, I had to pretend I was okay. Smile at my son. Work. Function. But inside I was falling apart. My body started to show its age. Constant headaches. Stomach pain that wouldn't go away. Fatigue that even the most intense sleep couldn't relieve, when I could actually sleep at all. One afternoon at work, while I was organizing the shelves, everything started spinning. I grabbed the counter, took a deep breath, but it was no use. My legs gave way. Fell. I didn't completely faint, but I lay on the floor, too weak to get up, hearing voices in the distance asking if I was okay. My boss sent me home. She said I looked terrible, that I needed to rest, that if I kept going like this I'd end up in the hospital. I took the bus back, holding back tears, because if I started crying there among strangers I wouldn't stop. I got home, picked up my son from the neighbor's house, and as soon as I closed the door, I broke down. I sat on the living room floor and cried. I cried out loud, desperately, in a way I never let him see. My son came running. He hugged me. He said, "Don't cry, Mommy. Don't cry." And that broke my heart even more. Because a 5-year-old shouldn't have to comfort his mother. He should just be playing, being a child. But there he was, so small, trying to calm me down. Because he already knew, in his own way, that we only had each other. That night, after putting him to bed, I called the therapist a friend had recommended. I told her everything. The process, the fall, the despair, the fear of not being able to cope. She listened and told me something I needed to hear. You don't have to be strong all the time. You can break down. You can ask for help. And that doesn't make you weak. Makes you human. I cried again. But this time it was different. It was a cry of relief. In the following days I accepted help. Something I'd never done before. My neighbor offered to pick up my son from school for a few days. Accepted. Coworker gave me leftover food. Accepted it. I stopped pretending I could handle everything on my own. Because the truth is, I couldn't. And it's okay not to. And it was there, hitting rock bottom, that I understood. Fighting doesn't mean never falling. It means getting up even after falling. And sometimes to get up we need help. And that's okay. Comment below if you've ever felt on the verge of collapse. If you've ever had to choose between falling apart or continuing to pretend you're okay. Because we don't have to pretend alone. We need to support each other. It was a Saturday morning, one of those when I didn't have to get up early, when my son gave me the push I didn't know I needed. I was still lying down, exhausted from the week, when I felt him climb onto the bed. I opened my eyes and there he was, sitting next to me, looking at me. I smiled weakly and asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer with words. He simply threw himself on top of me in a tight hug, the kind a child gives when he wants to hold on to his mother forever. I held him. And there, in that morning silence, with him warm in my arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. It wasn't complete or perfect peace, but it was a breath of fresh air. A reminder that, despite everything, I had managed to keep what mattered most intact, him. Healthy, happy, safe. With me. We stayed there for a while, just the two of us taking our time. Until he lifted his little head, looked at me with those pure eyes and said, "Mommy, you're the best mommy in the world." My heart ached, because I didn't feel like the best. I felt tired, broken, inadequate. But for him I was enough. For him I was everything. And that was worth every sleepless night, every hidden tear, every battle fought. That day I decided to do something different. Something just for us. I took the money I had saved for emergencies. Not much but enough, and took him to the park. That amusement park with the entrance fee, the one I always passed by, and said, "We'll go another day." This time we went. I bought the ticket. I watched him run, go on the slide, laugh out loud. That carefree laugh that only children have when they are truly happy. I sat on a bench just watching. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't think about the process. I didn't think about my ex. I didn't think about the debts. I just thought, translated, look at him. Look what I did. Alone. 'Cause it was true. That happy, healthy, polite, kind boy was my creation. He didn't have a father figure around. He didn't have financial support. He didn't have luxuries. But he had love. And presence. And no one was going to take that away from him. Late that afternoon on the way home, he took my hand on the bus and said, "Mom, today was the best day of my life." And I, holding back tears, replied, "Mine too, son. Mine too." 'Cause it was true. It hadn't been a day of great achievements. Nothing extraordinary had happened. But the essential thing had happened. We had lived. Together. Happy. Even with everything crumbling around us. That night, after putting him to bed, I picked up my phone and checked the messages about the case. There was an update. The hearing had been scheduled. It was going to be in 2 weeks. The nervousness returned. The fear returned. But with them came something new. Determination. Because I had remembered that day in the park why I was fighting. It wasn't out of anger. It wasn't for revenge. It was for him. So that he would never again have to ask why he didn't have a father. So that he would know he had a mother who did everything. I turned off my phone. I took a deep breath. And for the first time in weeks I slept. Not all night. But I slept. Because I had regained my balance. And that balance was him. The day of the hearing arrived. I woke up with a knot in my stomach. That nervous feeling you get when you know something important is about to happen. I put on my best clothes. Black pants and a white shirt I kept for occasions like this. And dropped my son off at school. He asked why I looked different, and I told him it was just a date. I didn't want to pressure him. I didn't want him to know that this day could change everything. I arrived at the courthouse half an hour early. I sat on a bench in the hallway, nervous, mentally rehearsing everything I wanted to say. But when they called him, when I entered the courtroom and saw him sitting on the other side, in a suit well dressed with his private attorney, I almost lost my voice. Because the difference between us was abysmal. He had resources. I only had the truth. The judge started by asking about child support. My lawyer presented all the evidence. 5 years without him paying a single penny. 5 years of expenses that I paid myself. His lawyer tried to argue that he knew nothing about the pregnancy, that I had never officially filed for it. Delight. He knew. I had screenshots of old messages, from before he blocked me, where I told him I was pregnant and asked for his help. I showed him everything. The judge reviewed the documents, then looked at him and asked directly, "Do you confirm that you are the child's father?" He hesitated. And that infuriated me so much that I had to bite my tongue to keep from exploding right then and there. After 5 years, he still had the nerve to hesitate. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, and he replied curtly, "Yes." The judge then asked, "And why have you never paid child support?" Silence. She had no answer. Because there is no other answer to abandonment than the stark reality. She didn't want him. It was that simple. The judge shook his head, wrote something down, and then ruled. Retroactive child support for the 5 years, plus monthly child support starting that month. The amount was set at 30% of his salary. And if he didn't pay, an arrest warrant would be issued. I left that room trembling. Trembling with relief, with shock, with victory. I sat in the hallway and cried. I cried because it had been worth it. Because justice had prevailed. Because for the first time, someone other than me had seen the situation and said, "This isn't right. And there will be consequences." My lawyer sat beside me, gave me a tissue and said, "You did it. And you deserved it." Leaving the courthouse, I called my neighbor and asked her to pick up my son from school. I needed a few minutes to myself. I went to a nearby park, sat on a bench, and simply breathed. I breathed deeply and slowly, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't the end. I still had a long way to go. But it was the beginning of something new. Of a life where I wouldn't carry everything alone. That night when I got home, my son greeted me with a new drawing. It was of him and me again, but this time there was a house, a tree, and the sun. I held the drawing and thought, translate, we're going to be okay. Finally, we're going to be okay. Because now money was coming in. Not much, but enough to pull us out of despair. It was enough for me to plan, to breathe, to exist beyond simply surviving. And for the first time in 5 years, I slept through the night. Without waking up startled. Without fear of tomorrow. Because tomorrow, at last, had begun to make sense. 2 months after the hearing, the first child support payment arrived in my account. I was at the supermarket when my phone vibrated with the notification. I stopped in the middle of the aisle, card in hand, and stared at the screen in disbelief. It was real. The money was there. After 5 years, something was finally arriving that didn't come solely from my hard-earned money. And do you know what I felt? At first, it wasn't a relief. It was anger. Anger at the knowledge that I had always been able to pay and was only paying because I was forced to. But after the anger, something else came. Space. Space to breathe. Space to think about something other than overdue bills. And it was in that space that I realized how much I had lost myself. For 5 years I had been nothing more than a mother and a worker. 5 years since I had looked in the mirror and seen myself as a woman. I had become a mere function. And the woman? She had been left behind, forgotten, as if she didn't matter. I started noticing the small details. My hair, which I cut myself, was uneven, because going to the hairdresser was a luxury. My clothes, all the same shade, black, grey, brown, because they didn't attract attention and didn't get dirty easily. My nails, beaten by nervousness. My body, which I no longer recognized, not because it had changed, but because I never stopped to look at it. I had forgotten that there was a person inside, beneath the armor of a warrior mother. One afternoon, while my son was playing at the neighbor's house, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a peaceful shower. I closed the bathroom door, turned on the shower, and stood there under the warm water, simply feeling. Without thinking about what I had to do next, without planning dinner, without rushing. Simply being. And when I got out, I looked at myself in the fag mirror, wiped it with my hand, and really looked at myself. I saw a tired woman, but standing. A woman who had survived. And for the first time, I felt something that wasn't used to tiredness. It was curiosity. Curiosity about who I could still be. I started small. When my pension arrived, I had a little extra at the end of the month. Not much. But something. I save for 3 months. And when I finally the nog, I did something used for myself. I made an appointment at a hair salon. Nothing expensive. Nothing fancy. But it was for me. I got a haircut, styled my bangs, and painted my nails red. A color I always liked but never used because I thought it was too flashy. And when I left there, I wasn't used different on the outside. It was different on the inside. My son noticed. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and said, "Mom, you look beautiful." I laughed. I laughed for real. Like he hadn't laughed in a long time. And he replied, "Thank you, sweetheart." Because it was true. I did look beautiful. Not because I began to the hairdresser. But because I remembered that he mattered. That he existed beyond being his mother. That the woman he was before all this was still there, waiting for him to see her. But along with this rediscovery came loneliness. The loneliness of realizing that for 5 years no one had looked at me with desire, with interest, with anything more than pity or admiration for the warrior. For 5 years no one had touched me. No one had kissed me. No one had seen me as a woman. And that hit in a different, silent way, one that no one saw, but that weighed on me every night when I lay alone and remembered that I was only 28. That I was still young. That I could still desire more. I didn't have an easy answer for that. I didn't have a Prince Charming waiting for me. And maybe I never would. But at least now, looking in the mirror with my hair done and my nails painted red, I saw a woman who hadn't given up. And that, for now, had to be enough. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel. Because this journey still has a long way to go. And I want you to see how far we can go when we stop denying ourselves. With the pension that arrived each month, something changed. It wasn't overnight, but little by little I realized I was no longer in constant despair. I still had to work, I still had to stretch my money, but now I had some to spare. And with that extra money came a question I never asked myself before. Translated, and now? What do I want for myself? For my son? For our future? One Sunday evening, after putting my son to bed, I sat down with a notebook and a pen. At the top of the page, I wrote, "Plans." And I stared at the blank page for a while. Because for 5 years I hadn't planned. I only reacted. Planning was a luxury for those who had room for error. But now I had a small opportunity. Small, but I had it. And I was going to take it. I started writing. First, the basics. Create an emergency fund. Because if there is one thing I've learned over the years, it's that unexpected things always happen, and those without savings are doomed. Second, take a course. Something that will give me the opportunity to earn more, to get ahead in life, to not stay in the same place forever. Third, move out of my rented apartment. I knew I dream big. But now that I could dream, I was going to dream big. I looked for online courses. There were several: administration, basic computing, customer service. I signed up for 2. They would be in the afternoons, online, so I could do them after my son went to sleep. Would it be exhausting? Yes. Would it take away from my esteem? Yes. But would it be worth it? Also yes. Because I didn't want to be in the same place 5 years from now, just reacting. I wanted to build. I started the courses. It was difficult. I worked all day, looked after my son at night, and kept studying after I went to bed. There were nights I fell asleep with my phone in my hand, in the middle of a video lesson. There were days I wanted to give up. But every time I felt like giving up, I looked at my sleeping son and thought, translated, it's for him. It's for us. And I kept going. 3 months later, I finished my first course. I printed the certificate at an internet cafe, held it in my hands, and cried. Because it was mine. It was proof that I could do more. That I wasn't just a single mother surviving. I was a woman growing, learning, rebuilding myself. I took a picture of myself with the certificate and sent it to my neighbor. She replied, "I always knew you'd go far." And that gave me even more strength. At work, I started to stand out. Not because I was working harder, I always had, but because I was working differently now. With more confidence. With more knowledge. My boss noticed. Shikayed me said and asked if he was interested in a small promotion. Nothing major, but more responsibility and an extra 100 reais in salary. He accepted immediately. And when he got home that day, he hugged my son and said, "We're moving up, son. Slowly, but we're moving up." He updated my financial spreadsheet. Yes, he started making spreadsheets. Something organized people do, something he never done, but was beginning to do. Now he had 3 columns: income, salary, pension, expenses, fixed costs, and surplus, which went into my emergency fund, my dreams. He looked at those columns and smiled. Because for the first time, he wasn't just surviving. He was planning. He was building. And that's when he understood. The best response to someone who abandoned you isn't anger. It's not a demand, even if it's necessary. The best response is to thrive. It's to prove to yourself that you never needed them to win. That you always called. You just needed time, a break, an opportunity. And now that you had it, you weren't going to waste it. He had been receiving child support payments regularly for 6 months when he reappeared. He wasn't angry anymore, and he didn't have a lawyer. This time, he sent a long message, full of apologies, saying he had talked a lot, that he had recognized his mistake, that he wanted to be a real father, that he wanted to meet his son, that he had changed, and that he hoped he could forgive him and give him another chance. He read it 3 times. Every word filled me with a mixture of anger and exhaustion. Because where was that reflection 5 years ago? Where was that regret when he asked for help? Where was that desire to be a father when he said he wouldn't take responsibility? But at the same time, a part of me thought, what if it's true? What if he really has changed? Don't my son deserve to know his father? He didn't respond immediately. He spent days thinking about it. He spoke with my therapist. Told me, translate, you can try. But with clear boundaries. With protection. And knowing that if it fails, you won't blame yourself. He took a deep breath. And he responded. He told her that if she wanted to see her son, it would have to be gradual, always with me present and with a real commitment. No showing up on scene and disappearing again. No empty promises. He agreed. We arranged a meeting. In a public square, on a Saturday morning. He brought my son, but he prepared him beforehand. He sat down at his level, took his little hands, and said, "Today you will meet your biological father. He wants to see you. But if you don't want to, that's okay. It's your decision." My son looked at me with those big eyes and asked, "Isn't it?" He held back my tears and replied, "I don't know yet, son. But I'll be by your side every step of the way." When we arrived, he was already there, hands in his pockets, nervous. My son HID behind me. He didn't run to him. He didn't smile. He stood close to my leg, watching the stranger everyone said was his father. He bent down, tried to smile, and waved. My son responded softly, without leaving my side. Anthony saw it. For him, this man wasn't his father. He was a stranger. We stood there for an hour. He tried to talk, to ask about school, about his favorite cartoons. My son answered with monosyllables, always looking at me to make sure he was okay. And me. He was on alert, watching every word, every gesture, every promise. Because he had already heard promises. What he needed now was consistency. In the end, he asked me to do it again. He said he wanted to see me again, that he was going to prove he was serious. He told him it was up to my son. If he wanted, we could go back. If not, he would have to respect that. He agreed. But when we left, my son took my hand on the bus and said, "Mom, I don't know if I like you." He hugged him and replied, "You don't have to be liked now. You don't have to be liked ever if you don't want to be. You have me. And that will never change." During the following weeks, I stayed in touch. I asked how my son was, asked to see him again. Little by little, I gave him permission. Always with me present. Always under my control. But what bothered me most wasn't him. It was the external pressure. His family started demanding, "Let him go alone. You're being controlling." And that silently enraged me. Becausewer huerto se voices when in needed them. He replied to his aunt, politely but firmly. Translate, in his place strong actions, not your pressure. If it's truly changed, to it. And in the meantime, I'm the one protecting my son. As he always have. She didn't like it. But I didn't care. Because for the first time, he wasn't asking for approval. He was demanding respect. The following months were the most emotionally confusing. Because I kept showing up. Not every weekend, but with some regularity. A pat child support on time, because I knew that if I didn't, I'd go to jail. I brought my son a gift nothing. And little by little, my son began to open up. Not much, but I started. And every smile gave that man caused a strange pain in my chest. It wasn't a jealousy. It wasn't a fear of losing my son. It was rage. Rage because I had the privilege of showing up now, with everything ready, without having brought a single thing. While he spent 5 years waking up in the middle of the night, battling fevers, cleaning up vomit, teaching him to walk, teaching him to talk. And all it took was for him to show up with a toy car to make my son smile? Wiley, who did everything, was still the one setting the limits, the one who was a nuisance? One day he lost my patience. It was after that I were the promise to take my son to the amusement park. My son was excited all day, counting down the minutes. But I didn't show up. He texted me at the last minute saying something unexpected had come up. My son cried. He cried that heartbreaking way, asking why his father had lied to him. And me. He hugged him, wiped his tears, and felt such intense anger that I had to lock myself in the bathroom to keep from exploding in front of him. He called my ex. And this time he had no patience. Translate, you can this. You can't promise what you're not going to deliver. Because when you disappear, I'm the one who holds back her tears. Like always. Either you take this seriously or you're gone for good. Because I won't let you hate her again. He tried to justify himself, but you up. Because I heard the no apologies. He spoke with the therapist again. She asked me a direct question. What do you want? For him to disappear forever? Or for him to learn to be a real father? And the answer wasn't simple. Because a part of me wanted him to disappear. I didn't want my son to have to deal with the disappointment of having a half-hearted father. But another part of me knew. If he cut him off now, my son would grow up and ask me why he stopped him. And I didn't want to carry that guilt. I decided to do things differently. I called him for a serious conversation. Used to fuese. And I laid this out for him. Translate, either you make a real commitment, with dedication and consistency, or you leave. Because my son doesn't deserve a weekend dad who's only there when he feels like it. He deserves someone who will stay. And if you can't be that person, it's better to leave now than to keep hurting him little by little. He was silent. And then he said something that surprised me. Translate, I'm afraid. Afraid of not knowing how to be a father. Afraid of making mistakes. And for the first time I saw something beyond cowardice. I saw insecurity. I replied, still resolute. Translate, I was afraid too. And I still am. But I stayed. Because fatherhood isn't about who knows. It's about who stays even without knowing. If you want to be a father, you're going to make mistakes. But you'll be there. And that's what matters. He promised to try. He promised to be more present, more consistent. And me. I gave him one last chance. Not for him, but for my son. Because in the end, it wasn't about forgiving my ex or not. It was about giving my son the chance to have a father. Even if he was imperfect. Even if it was late. With boundaries. With protection. But a chance. That night, I wrote down everything I felt on a piece of paper. The anger, the fear, the fragile hope. I folded the paper and put it in a drawer. And I promised myself, if he fails again, I'll leave him alone. Without guilt. Without pity. 'Cause my son deserves someone to stay. And if that someone isn't his biological father, it will still be me. As it always has been. 3 months after that last meeting, my son asked me the question I dreaded most. We were in his room. I was making the bed, and he was drawing on the floor. When he put down his crayon, he looked at me and exclaimed, "Mom, why wasn't my dad here when I was a baby?" My heart stopped. I held the sheet in my hands, took a deep breath, and sat down on the floor next to him. I took his little hand and began slowly. "Translate. When you were born, your father was very scared. He was young, he didn't know how to be a father, and instead of staying and learning, he left. It wasn't your fault. Never was. It was his decision." He remained silent, processing. And then came the second question, the one I knew was coming. "Translate. Didn't he want me?" I felt a pang in my chest. I took a deep breath and said, "I think I loved you, but I didn't know how to show it. And I was afraid. But what matters is that I always loved you. Me. From the very first second. And that will never change." She looked at me with those doubtful eyes and asked, "And now? Does she love me now?" And that shattered me. Because the honest answer was, "I don't know. Maybe she's trying. Maybe she's just fulfilling her obligation." But I couldn't project that onto a 6-year-old. So I said, "I think he's trying to learn how to love you properly. But you know what I want you to know? You don't need his approval to be amazing. You already are. With him or without him." He was quiet for a while, and then he said something that broke my heart. "But I wanted him to want to be with me from the beginning. Like my friend's parents." I hugged him, even though he was already grown. And I cried with him. 'Cause I wanted it too. I wanted him to have had a father present from the beginning. I wanted him not to have to carry the pain of wondering why he wasn't enough for someone to stay. But life hadn't been that way. And now all I could do was hug him, show him that I loved him, and teach him that someone's absence doesn't define his worth. That night, after putting him to bed, I called my ex. I told him about the conversation. And I said firmly, "You need to understand one thing. This isn't about you. It's about him. Every time you make a promise and break it, every time you come and go, you're hurting him. And I'm not going to let this continue if you don't really change." He was silent. And then he said, "I don't want to hurt him. I don't know how to do it right." I replied with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. "Then learn. Or leave. Because he doesn't deserve an indifferent father. He deserves someone who will stay. And if you can't be that person, tell me now." Because I'd rather explain to him that his father can't be there than let him suffer with false hopes. He promised to truly try. But I no longer believed in promises. I was only going to believe in actions. In the following days, my son grew calmer. Not sad but thoughtful. Until one afternoon he came to me and said, "Mom, even though my father isn't staying, it's okay. 'Cause I have you. And you've always stayed." I hugged him tightly. Because there was the answer. Even with all the pain, even with all the absence, he knew he was loved. And that no one could take away from him. That night I wrote a letter. Not to my ex. Not to the judge. But to my son. For when he grows up and needs to understand everything again. I wrote about the struggle, about his father's absence, about child support, about justice. But also about love. About how much I loved him from the very first second. About how I never gave up. I put the letter in a small box. And one day, when he's ready, I'll give it to him. If I could go back and meet the woman I was 6 years ago, the one who heard, "I'm not going to take responsibility," and swallowed the pain alone, thinking she had no rights, I would sit beside her, take her hand and say, "Translated, stand up for your rights. Take legal action. Don't wait for him to change. Don't wait for him to realize. Because he won't. Unless he's forced to. Because for 6 years I carried it all alone. I thought asking for child support was being a mercenary. I thought suing was being radical. I thought I had to deal with everything alone because a strong mother can handle anything. And I almost died trying. I almost lost myself. I almost forgot that I was also a person, not just a function. And it was only when I sought justice, when I stopped accepting crumbs, that things began to change. Today, looking back, I see the journey. I didn't become an exemplary father. I continued to fail. I continued to disappoint. But I pay the price. And my son eats better, dresses better, has what he needs. And me. Breathe. Plan. I exist beyond just surviving. I took courses, got a promotion, created an emergency fund. And all of this was only possible because I stopped carrying the burden of 2 people alone. My son turned 6 today. He knows who his biological father is. He sees him occasionally, but he also knows who has always been there for him, who brought him down when he had a fever, who cleaned his scraped knees, who taught him to read, who never, ever gave up on him. And no one can take that away from him, because presence is worth more than genetics, and love is worth more than a last name. If you're listening and you also have an ex who disappeared, who doesn't pay, who now wants to come back as if nothing happened, I want to tell you something with all my heart. You're not obligated to make it easy for him. You're not obligated to open the door just because he decided to knock. You can demand accountability. You can demand the return of child support. You can use the law. Because supporting a child isn't a favor. It's an obligation. And whoever fails to fulfill it must be held accountable. What if he wants to see his son? That's fine. But on your terms. With boundaries. With protection. Because you're not a villain for protecting him. You're a mother. And mothers protect. Always. No matter what others say. No matter if they call you controlling, radical, or vindictive. You know what you've been through. You know what you've carried. And you have the right to decide who enters your son's life and how. Today, when I see my son sleeping, when I see him smile more, when I see the refrigerator full and the bills paid, I know it was worth it. Every tear. Every legal process. Every sleepless night wondering if I had done the right thing. It was worth it. 'Cause he deserved it. And so did I. I deserved justice. I deserved respect. I deserved not to carry alone what belonged to both of us. If this story touched you, give it a like. It's not vanity. It's showing the algorithm that single mothers' stories matter. That the struggle of a woman raising a child alone isn't a drama, it's reality. Comment below if you too have had to make a difficult decision to protect your child. If you too have been afraid to act and be judged. Because sometimes reading "I've been through this too" is the push you need. Subscribe to the channel to follow more real, unfiltered stories of mothers who struggle every day. And if you know a woman going through this right now, share this video with her. Sometimes we change the course of someone's life simply by showing them there's a way. My ex disappeared for 5 years without paying child support. He came back wanting to be a father again. And I made a decision. He would pay first. I would prove it with legal action, not words. I would respect my son's time, not his. And if he failed again, I would leave him without remorse. 'Cause my son deserves someone who will stay. And if that someone isn't his biological father, it will still be me. As it always has been. Listen to this. Don't be afraid to use the law. That's what it's for. Don't be afraid to demand the bare minimum. Because the bare minimum is a right, not a favor. And you, single mother tired of carrying everything alone, deserve justice. You deserve respect. And you are not alone. We are in this fight together. Always.